Welcome once again to the Brownstone, Nero Wolfe's sanctuary of logic, orchids, and murder. Do tell us where in the world you're listening from, and don't hesitate to share your thoughts. Shall we begin? Nero Wolfe and the blonde at the typewriter. The doorbell rang at precisely 11 o'clock. I glanced up from my desk in the office, where the morning sun had the decency to keep to the margins of the Venetian blinds. I heard Fritz's steps retreating from the front hall. Good man, would never open the door. That burden fell to me. When I pulled open the door, she stood there, a woman of about 30, dark coat buttoned to the collar, curls pinned with no-nonsense precision. But it was her right hand that caught the eye, gloved in fine leather, but slightly trembling, clutching a worn manila envelope as if it contained either her salvation or her ruin. She didn't speak. I raised an eyebrow. "Miss Lydia Vale," she said. Her voice was even, but the eyes worked overtime, scanning the foyer behind me like she expected a tail to round the corner. I was told, "This is where Mr. Wolfe resides?" "He does. He also doesn't come to the door, which is why I do. I'm Archie Goodwin." Her eyes flicked toward the stairs. "Are you his secretary?" "I'm the factotum. Comes with a decent vocabulary and a sense of rhythm. Come in." She hesitated before stepping inside. I took her coat, wool, decent cut, faint smell of cologne and cigarettes, and gestured her through to the office. Wolfe was in his chair naturally, yellow leather, polished and square. He looked up with the usual expression that sat somewhere between polite contempt and digestive discomfort. The orchids, thank heaven, had concluded their audience for the morning. "She insists it's urgent," I said. "Everything is urgent to those who arrive unannounced," Wolfe muttered. "Sit, madam." "Not there, the red chair." She took it without protest, knees together, envelope still in hand. I took my usual place by the desk. "I'm Lydia Vale," she began again. "I'm a typist for Alan Varrick." That gave Wolfe a flicker. He reached toward the bottle-green glass on the side table and poured himself half a glass of beer. "Editorial magnate," I offered. "New York Review, Metropolitan Press, a couple of publishing arms, tight with state senators and gents who like hunting lodges." Wolfe nodded, as if the name needed no further credential. "Continue." Miss Vale's grip on the envelope remained unchanged. "I think he's involved in a murder." I leaned forward. "Think or know?" Her lips pressed together. "I don't have a body, but I have this." She placed the envelope on the desk, releasing it like it burned her fingers. "What is it?" I asked. "Pages. A manuscript. Part of one. At least. Someone left it in my typewriter tray last night. Unsigned. It wasn't written by Varrick or any of the editorial staff. I know their prose. This..." She shook her head. "It read like a confession. Fictionalized, yes, but specific." Wolfe tapped a finger on the envelope. "Specific in what way?" "Names altered, locations blurred, but events, they match things that actually happened in the building. Real meetings, real conflicts." I opened the envelope and slid the pages out. Standard typewriter font, crisp, margins, single-spaced. One page had a faint fingerprint in the corner, smudged with what might have been ink, or something more colourful. Wolfe took the stack, adjusted his glasses, and began to read. His lips barely moved, but the tension in the room shifted as his eyes moved line by line. When he finished, he placed the sheets down, forming a precise stack. "Miss Vale, why bring this to me and not the police?" She paused. "Because, if I'm wrong, they'll say I forged it. If I'm right, Varrick is powerful. He knows people who don't wait for warrants." "That," Wolfe said, "is vague. Are you being followed?" "I don't know. I thought I was earlier. A man in a dark hat kept pace on 51st, but he vanished when I crossed to the park. Description? Tall, brown coat, wore gloves. I couldn't see his face." I caught Wolfe's eyes. He gave the smallest nod. "Archie," he said, "show Miss Vale to the front door. She should leave separately from the envelope. Then call Saul, Fred, and Ori. I want her movements traced from 9 a.m. to now." She stood, reluctant. "I'm not lying. Mr. Wolfe." Wolfe waved a hand. "Madam, I am not the police, nor am I easily persuaded. You are merely one in a long parade of women who type for dangerous men." She flushed. "This isn't just office gossip." "I hope not," Wolfe said, reaching for his glass, "or my beer is wasted." I walked her to the door without another word, and she didn't offer one. Out on the stoop, the wind had picked up. Her coat flared slightly as she descended the steps. She didn't look back. That, in itself, told me something. When I returned, Wolfe hadn't moved. The manuscript lay untouched, but the glass was now empty. "She's either scared," I said, "or playing scared very well." Wolfe replied. "You buy her story?" "No, but," he sighed, "but the writing, whoever composed those pages has knowledge not found on the street. That alone is sufficient to proceed." I crossed to the windows and parted the blinds. "You think Varrick's involved?" Wolfe didn't answer immediately. He leaned back, his fingertips pressed together, forming that familiar, arrogant steeple. "I think," he said slowly, "that the language is too elegant for a simple forgery. I also think Miss Vale is not the sort to insert herself into danger unless she believed she already stood within it." I turned. "So, we investigate? We observe. Observation, Mr. Goodwin, is the only form of patience I tolerate." I slid the manuscript into a folder and marked it. The pages gave off a faint smell, carbon paper and faintly stale perfume. Not Lydia's, someone else's. "She said someone left it in her tray," I mused. "But it doesn't sound like something you forget." "No," Wolfe said. "It sounds like something you plant." The silence settled in again. Outside, a delivery truck idled at the curb. Fritz clinked glassware somewhere beyond the hall. And inside the brownstone, Wolfe closed his eyes. "Tomorrow," he muttered, "we begin with the editorial offices. And Mr. Varrick's peculiar sense of fiction." I nodded. "You want to bait a magnate?" "No," Wolfe murmured. "I want to see who swallows the hook." I stepped into the hall, reached for the telephone, and dialed Saul. Something told me we'd need more than sharp prose to unravel this one. We'd need men who could vanish in a crowd and catch ghosts hiding behind ribbon copy and literary style. In the office, Wolfe stirred only to say, "And Archie?" "Yes. No food discussions. I have no appetite for typists and tragedy." I smiled. "Got it. Just murder and metaphors." "Precisely." She didn't say goodbye, just slipped out, silent as an underline on a final page. I watched her go from the window above the stoop, noting the posture. Rigid spine, clipped gait, eyes cast low like a typist, afraid her punctuation might betray her. When she vanished past the elm at the corner, I let the curtain fall and turned back to the office. The envelope she'd left sat dead center on Wolfe's desk, still unopened. Wolfe didn't touch it. That was my job. I peeled it open. Inside, a marked-up manuscript with blue pencil notes in 3 different hands. Most were edits, insertions, rewrites, structure changes, but one page stood out. Wrong font, wrong tone, wrong spacing, no margin code. Just a single, stark paragraph in fresh ink. Wolfe adjusted his glasses and read it aloud. She saw him. He told her she hadn't, but she remembered the shoes. He paused. "What kind of shoes?" "Not specified," I said. "Maybe brown, maybe blood-stained." Wolfe grunted. We spent the next hour reviewing the material. It was chapter 17 of a novel that didn't quite exist. No title, no author. But someone had tried to rewrite history in fiction, and not very subtly. "Someone's hands are dirty," I said. Wolfe sipped his beer. "Someone's hands are careless." That night passed without interruption. Lydia didn't call. She didn't write. She didn't knock. And I didn't sleep much, though that wasn't unusual in our line of business. Next morning, Manhattan woke to grey light and the crumpled echo of headlines. I came down the stairs at 9 with the smell of Fritz's coffee trailing me like a debt collector. The Times lay folded on the table. Front page, lower column. Editor's secretary falls to death from Upper East balcony. My stomach shifted. Name, Bernice Talbot. Employer, Alan Varrick. Cause, foul play suspected. I carried the paper into the office. Wolfe glanced up, then returned to his book. "She's dead," I said. He didn't blink. "Miss Vale?" "No. Varrick's secretary. Last night. Balcony. 6 stories up." He sighed. "Timing? Roughly 9:30. Neighbors heard shouting. No witnesses. Police? Investigating. Nothing public yet. No arrest. No motive." He nodded once. "Call Kramer. Ask if he's sending men." "And Miss Vale? No word?" "None." He shut his book. Then find her, before someone else does. By noon, I'd made the rounds. Saul hadn't seen her. Neither had Fred. Ori was still waiting outside the boarding house on West 84th. No one had come in or out, but a delivery boy with a cheese Danish and a bad haircut. I tried her telephone number, no answer. Called the office, disconnected. I even called a friend at the Herald, a typesetter who once spelled my name as Archie in a press release. Nothing. Back at the brownstone, I dropped into the red chair with a thud. She's gone, I said. Wolfe didn't move, vanished. No return to her flat, no calls, no inquiries. Wolfe tapped his lip. Then she knew the girl. You think Lydia and Bernice were close? No, but she knew the secretary was in danger. I leaned forward. You think she saw it coming? No. I think she read it coming. In that manuscript. I picked up the typed page again. The last line was underlined. She remembered the shoes. Maybe, I said. The shoes matter. They always matter, Wolfe muttered. No man kills. In bare feet. The front bell rang. Twice. Sharp. Tell Wolfe I'm coming in, he said. You just did. He brushed past me and stomped into the office. Wolfe didn't move. Didn't open his eyes. I should charge you rent, Kramer muttered. You spend more time obstructing justice than investigating it. Wolfe sighed, eyes still shut. I never obstruct. I avoid needless entanglement. Kramer slapped the folded newspaper on the table. Headlines circled in pencil. Varrick secretary's death ruled homicide. Tell me about the blonde, Kramer said. I folded my arms. Which one? Kramer didn't smile. The one who came here Tuesday. Name? Lydia Vale. Typist. Left something with you. We know she was here. Wolfe opened his eyes. You know, he said. Very little. You speculate with volume. That is not knowing. Kramer. Turn to me. You have something of hers. A manuscript. She left it. Wolfe read it. Where is she? If we knew, I'd be charging rent myself. He stepped closer. She's wanted. Not just for questioning. We found a note. One line. She knew too much. Typed. Same font. Same paper. Same phrasing as the one you're holding. Wolfe leaned forward. You assume she typed it. She had motive. No alibi. No witnesses. Wolfe waved a hand. You're being lazy, Inspector. Kramer scowled. I'm being practical. Wolfe reached for the manuscript, lifting the rogue page by its top edge. This, he said, was not typed by Lydia Vale. Kramer narrowed his eyes. You're guessing. I do not guess, Wolfe said. This page was typed on a different machine. The spacing bears a fractional tilt. The ribbon is newer. Miss Vale used a Remington portable. This is not from a Remington. Kramer grabbed the page, scanned it, snorted. So what? Someone planted it? Yes, Wolfe said. Planted it with purpose. Someone wants Miss Vale blamed. And you're saying she's innocent? I'm saying she has not had the opportunity to prove otherwise. I stepped in. She left scared. No contact since. Either she's hiding or she's dead. Kramer's jaw set like stone. We're canvassing the city. Apartments empty. Boarding house untouched. No friends willing to talk. If she's not guilty, she's doing a damn good impression. Wolfe lifted his beer, untouched until now, and sipped. She may be a fool. That is common. Fools run. Murderers stay and watch. Kramer moved to the window. Looked out. The late afternoon light cut in like a scalpel across the bookshelves. She worked under Varrick, he said. Yes, Wolfe replied. Then you believe he's involved? Wolfe didn't answer. Kramer turned. You think he killed his secretary? I think, Wolfe said. He paid someone to do it. Kramer's voice dropped. We don't have that. Not yet. No, Wolfe said. Because you're chasing the wrong typist. The silence after that lingered like smoke. Kramer pocketed the page, nodded stiffly, and headed for the door. Before leaving, he turned back. When you find her, if you find her, you call me. Wolfe shut his eyes again. When? You find a blonde typist who writes murder fiction better than your boys investigate real ones. Call me. The door closed. Not slammed. Just firm. I glanced at Wolfe. You really think Kramer's wrong? I think, Wolfe said. He's aiming at the nearest shadow and missing the hand that cast it. I poured the rest of the cognac into my glass. We'd need more than fiction to solve this one. We'd need facts. And one woman who now had the entire city looking for her. The diner sat on the corner of 10th and 47th, where steam rose from grates and the coffee tasted like regret. The sign flickered. The windows were fogged from the inside, smudged with handprints and yesterday's lipstick. I walked in and spotted her at a booth near the back. Frannie. She wore green again. This time, a cardigan over a silk blouse. The colour. Still didn't like her, but she wore it with the pride of someone who'd stopped caring what suited her. Her lipstick had faded. Her nails were chipped. She stirred her coffee as though it might tell her something she didn't already know. She looked up, didn't smile, just tapped the seat across from her. "Mr. Goodwin," she said. "I was wondering when you'd show." I sat, took off my hat. The vinyl seat cracked beneath me. "I'm flattered. You shouldn't be. I ran out of people. I trust. That's the only reason you're here." I raised a hand for the waitress. Brunette, gum-chewing, arms crossed tight in a white apron. "Black coffee," I said. "Hot." Frannie didn't look up, just kept stirring. "I suppose you know why I came." She gave a tight nod. "Bernice is dead. Lydia's missing. And the cops want to know which one of us pushed her. Do you know?" She didn't blink. "No, but I know who didn't. Lydia. She didn't kill anybody. And you." She met my eyes. "If I'd done it, I wouldn't be sitting in a diner giving interviews." My coffee arrived. I sipped it. Bitter, burnt, honest. "You're a good typist," I said. "Fast hands, quiet feet. Wolfe thinks you're clever. That makes two of us." She smirked, but it cracked almost immediately. "Varrick paid you. That landed." She glanced down, stirred again. "After Bernice died," I said. "Hush. Money." She nodded, slow. 500 in cash. Envelope with no return. "For what?" Silence. "About what?" She looked out the window. A boy pushed past on the sidewalk, dragging a sled with one wheel missing. "About the argument. I heard Bernice and Varrick, loud. The day before she fell. What were they arguing about?" "I don't know, but she was crying." "You told the police?" "I told them she was tense. That's all. I left out the tears. And Varrick, he said she was unstable, that she'd been drinking. And you believed him?" She gave a dry laugh. "Alan Varrick doesn't believe in unstable women. He just believes in inconvenient ones." "Then why take the money?" "Because I needed rent, and because guilt spends just as well as innocence." I let that sit for a moment. Outside, a truck honked. Inside, someone dropped a plate. No one looked. Frannie's voice softened. "You don't believe me. I haven't decided yet." She lifted her coffee. It shook slightly as she drank. "Lydia had something," she said. "What kind of something?" "Typed. Dangerous. I don't know what it was, but she said she'd mail it to the press if anything happened to her." "You hear that directly?" She nodded. 2 nights before Bernice died, we were walking out. She had this envelope in her hand. White, thick. Said it was her insurance. And then, next day, she was pale, shaking. Said someone had been in her apartment. You believe her? I saw the door. Lock had scratches. Inside, papers scattered. Drawers open. She report it? No. Said it would only make things worse. I leaned back. "So you think Varrick had Bernice killed and tried to scare Lydia into silence?" Frannie shook her head. "I don't think he tried to scare her. I think he tried to erase her. But someone else beat him to the first move." "You're saying someone else planted that page?" "Maybe. Maybe Bernice found out what Lydia had typed. Maybe she planned to use it. Maybe someone didn't like that. Who?" Frannie looked down. Her voice dropped. "Roland Chase." I waited. He had keys to everything. He cleaned up after Varrick, rewrote things, covered things. Lydia didn't. Trust him. Did you? No one does. But we tolerated him. Until Bernice died. And now? Now I watch the shadows. I glanced at the check sitting under the sugar jar. "Want me to walk you back?" "No." "You sure?" She nodded. "I'm staying with my sister in Queens. I take the back exit. Let the boots find the front." I stood. She didn't. "Frannie," I said. "You said Lydia had something typed. You didn't see it?" "No." "You don't know what it said?" "No." I paused. "But you lied to the police." She looked up. Met my eyes again. "About what?" "You said you didn't know anything." She smiled. Faint, tired, crooked. "I didn't say I knew nothing. I just didn't say what I knew. That, at least, was honest." I left her there. coffee going cold, cardigan buttoned wrong, eyes watching every person who came through the door. On the walk back to the brownstone, I made 2 calls. One to Saul, one to the Herald. If Lydia Vale's envelope ever reached a newsroom, it hadn't landed yet, but someone had read it, someone had rewritten the truth, and someone, maybe more than one, was making damn sure the ribbon went missing before the world could see what she'd typed. Frannie met me on the corner of 9th and 43rd, shoulders hunched, gloves torn at the thumbs. She didn't speak right away, just pulled a small brass key from her coat pocket and held it out like it might burn her. She said to give you this, she said. If anything ever happened. Lydia, Frannie nodded. Said you'd know. What to do? I took the key. Stamped. Union Square Storage, 4C. What's inside? She wouldn't say, just said she didn't want it to vanish. Any idea what it is? She looked off toward the curb, where a boy in a patched jacket hawked yesterday's headlines. She typed it. That's all I know. I slipped the key into my pocket and offered her a nod. She didn't wait for conversation. She turned and walked west, vanishing into the murk between 2 delivery trucks. The storage building sat behind a shoe repair shop with a sign that read, "We fix souls." I passed 2 men smoking in silence under the eaves, nodded once, and climbed the narrow stairs. The smell of dust, leather, and stale paper greeted me like an old regret. Unit 4C was upstairs. The corridor was dim, paint peeled like old wallpaper. Stories. The lock turned with a dry click. Inside, quiet. 1 folding chair, 1 wooden crate, 1 battered Samsonite case with a green ribbon tied to the handle. I opened the case first. Inside, paper, carbon copies, stacked and bound with string. At least 40 pages, typed, labeled by date. Some were letters, others looked like internal. Memos, all bore the name of Alan Varrick or someone writing on his behalf. "Tell Wolfe I'm coming in," he said. "You just did." He brushed past me and stomped into the office. Wolfe didn't move, didn't open his eyes. "I should charge you rent," Kramer muttered. "You spend more time obstructing justice than investigating it." Wolfe sighed, eyes still shut. "I never obstruct. I avoid needless entanglement." Kramer slapped the folded newspaper on the table. Headline circled in pencil. Varrick Secretary's death-ruled homicide. "Tell me about the blonde," Kramer said. I folded my arms. "Which one?" Kramer didn't smile. "The one who came here Tuesday. Name, Lydia Vale. Typist. Left something with you. We know she was here." Wolfe opened his eyes. "You know," he said. "Very little. You speculate with volume. That is not knowing." Kramer turned to me. "You have something of hers. A manuscript. She left it. Wolfe read it. Where is she? If we knew, I'd be charging rent myself." He stepped closer. "She's wanted, not just for questioning. We found a note. 1 line. She knew too much. Typed. Same font, same paper, same phrasing as the one you're holding." Wolfe leaned forward. "You assume she typed it." She had motive. No alibi. No witnesses. Wolfe waved a hand. "You're being lazy, Inspector." Kramer scowled. "I'm being practical." Wolfe reached for the manuscript, lifting the rogue page by its top edge. "This," he said, "was not typed by Lydia Vale." Kramer narrowed his eyes. "You're guessing." "I do not guess," Wolfe said. "This page was typed on a different machine. The spacing bears a fractional tilt. The ribbon is newer. Miss Vale used a Remington portable. This is not from a Remington." Kramer grabbed the page, scanned it, snorted. "So what? Someone planted it." "Yes," Wolfe said. "Planted it with purpose. Someone wants Miss Vale blamed. And you're saying she's innocent?" "I'm saying she has not had the opportunity to prove otherwise." I stepped in. "She left scared. No contact since. Either she's hiding or she's dead." Kramer's jaw set like stone. "We're canvassing the city. Apartments empty. Boarding house untouched. No friends willing to talk. If she's not guilty, she's doing a damn good impression." Wolfe lifted his beer, untouched until now, and sipped. "She may be a fool. That is common. Fools run. Murderers stay and watch." Kramer moved to the window, looked out. The late afternoon light cut in like a scalpel across the bookshelves. "She worked under Varrick," he said. "Yes," Wolfe replied. "Then you believe he's involved?" Wolfe didn't answer. Kramer turned. You think he killed his secretary? I think, Wolfe said. He paid someone to do it. Kramer's voice dropped. We don't have that. Not yet. No, Wolfe said, because you're chasing the wrong typist. The silence after that lingered like smoke. Kramer pocketed the page, nodded stiffly, and headed for the door. Before leaving, he turned back. When you find her, if you find her, you call me. Wolfe shut his eyes again. When you find a blonde typist who writes murder fiction better than your boys investigate real ones, call me. The door closed. Not slammed, just firm. I glanced at Wolfe. You really think Kramer's wrong? I think, Wolfe said. He's aiming at the nearest shadow and missing the hand that cast it. I poured the rest of the cognac into my glass. We'd need more than fiction to solve this one. We'd need facts, and one woman who now had the entire city looking for her. The diner sat on the corner of 10th and 47th, where steam rose from grates and the coffee tasted like regret. The sign flickered. The windows were fogged from the inside, smudged with handprints and yesterday's lipstick. I walked in and spotted her at a booth near the back. Frannie. She wore green again, this time a cardigan over a silk blouse. The colour still didn't like her, but she wore it with the pride of someone who'd stopped caring what suited her. Her lipstick had faded. Her nails were chipped. She stirred her coffee as though it might tell her something she didn't already know. She looked up, didn't smile, just tapped the seat across from her. Mr. Goodwin, she said. I was wondering when you'd show. I sat, took off my hat. The vinyl seat cracked beneath me. I'm flattered. You shouldn't be. I ran out of people. I trust. That's the only reason you're here. I raised a hand for the waitress. Brunette, gum-chewing, arms crossed tight in a white apron. Black coffee, I said. Hot. Frannie didn't look up, just kept stirring. I suppose you know why I came. She gave a tight nod. Bernice is dead. Lydia's missing. And the cops want to know which one of us pushed her. Do you know? She didn't blink. No, but I know who didn't. Lydia? She didn't kill anybody. And you? She met my eyes. If I'd done it, I wouldn't be sitting in a diner giving interviews. My coffee arrived. I sipped it. Bitter, burnt, honest. You're a good typist, I said. Fast hands, quiet feet. Wolfe thinks you're clever. That makes two of us. She smirked, but it cracked almost immediately. Varrick paid you. That landed. She glanced down, stirred again. After Bernice died, I said. Hush. Money. She nodded, slow. 500, in cash. Envelope with no return. For what? Silence. About what? She looked out the window. A boy pushed past on the sidewalk, dragging a sled with one wheel missing. About the argument. I heard Bernice and Varrick. Loud. The day before she fell. What were they arguing about? I don't know. But she was crying. You told the police. I told them she was tense. That's all. I left out the tears. And Varrick. He said she was unstable, that she'd been drinking. And you believed him? She gave a dry laugh. Alan Varrick doesn't believe in unstable women. He just believes in inconvenient ones. Then why take the money? Because I needed rent. And because guilt spends just as well as innocence. I let that sit for a moment. Outside, a truck honked. Inside, someone dropped a plate. No one looked. Frannie's voice softened. You don't believe me. I haven't decided yet. She lifted her coffee. It shook slightly as she drank. Lydia had something, she said. What kind of something? Typed. Dangerous. I don't know what it was, but she said she'd mail it to the press if anything happened to her. You hear that directly? She nodded. 2 nights before Bernice died, we were walking out. She had this envelope in her hand. White, thick. Said it was her insurance. And then, next day she was pale, shaking. Said someone had been in her apartment. You believe her? I saw the door. Lock had scratches. Inside, papers scattered. Drawers open. She report it. No. Said it would only make things worse. I leaned back. So you think Varrick had Bernice killed and tried to scare Lydia into silence? Frannie shook her head. I don't think he tried to scare her. I think he tried to erase her, but someone else beat him to the first move. You're saying someone else planted that page? Maybe. Maybe Bernice found out what Lydia had typed. Maybe she planned to use it. Maybe someone didn't like that. Who? Frannie looked down. Her voice dropped. Roland Chase. I waited. He had keys to everything. He cleaned up after Varrick, rewrote things, covered things. Lydia didn't. Trust him. Did you? No one does. But we tolerated him. Until Bernice died. And now I watch the shadows. I glanced at the check sitting under the sugar jar. Want me to walk you back? No. You sure? She nodded. I'm staying with my sister in Queens. I take the back exit. Let the boots find the front. I stood. She didn't. Frannie, I said. You said Lydia had something typed. You didn't see it? No. You don't know what it said? No. I paused. But you lied to the police. She looked up, met my eyes again. About what? You said you didn't know anything. She smiled. Faint, tired, crooked. I didn't say I knew nothing. I just didn't say what I knew. That, at least, was honest. I left her there. Coffee going cold. Cardigan buttoned wrong. Eyes watching every person who came through the door. On the walk back to the brownstone, I made 2 calls. One to Saul, one to the Herald. If Lydia Vale's envelope ever reached a newsroom, it hadn't landed yet, but someone had read it. Someone had rewritten the truth, and someone, maybe more than one, was making damn sure the ribbon went missing before the world could see what she typed. Frannie met me on the corner of 9th and 43rd, shoulders hunched, gloves torn at the thumbs. She didn't speak right away, just pulled a small brass key from her coat pocket and held it out like it might burn her. She said, "To give you this," she said. "If anything ever happened." Lydia, Frannie nodded, said you'd know what to do. I took the key, stamped, Union Square Storage, 4C. What's inside? She wouldn't say, just said she didn't want it to vanish. Any idea what it is? She looked off toward the curb, where a boy in a patched jacket hawked yesterday's headlines. She typed it. That's all I know. I slipped the key into my pocket and offered her a nod. She didn't wait for conversation. She turned and walked west, vanishing into the murk between 2 delivery trucks. The storage building sat behind a shoe repair shop with a sign that read, "We fix souls." I passed 2 men smoking in silence under the eaves, nodded once and climbed the narrow stairs. The smell of dust, leather and stale paper greeted me like an old regret. Unit 4C was upstairs. The corridor was dim, paint peeled like old wallpaper. Stories. The lock turned with a dry click. Inside, quiet. 1 folding chair, 1 wooden crate, 1 battered Samsonite case with a green ribbon tied to the handle. I opened the case first. Inside, paper, carbon copies, stacked and bound with string. At least 40 pages, typed, labeled by date. Some were letters, others looked like internal memos. All bore the name of Alan Varrick or someone writing on his behalf. Alan Varrick or someone writing on his behalf. I flipped through the top few. One was a letter to a councilman in Albany, vague and generous in tone. Another was a note to a secretary, Bernice. The margin read, "Destroy after filing." Third, from the top, was typed on heavier stock. Subject line, "Emergency editorial override. See Roland." Handwritten across the bottom, "Don't trust him. He'll fold under pressure." That wasn't Varrick's handwriting. In the side pocket of the case sat a spool of black typewriter ribbon, curled like a sleeping snake. Below that, 1 torn page from a desk calendar. Tuesday, circled in red. Lunch, Bernard. Office closed, 2:04 p.m. Beneath it, a faint pencil note. No interruptions. RCI packed everything back, sealed the case, and took it downstairs. The street hadn't changed. The men still smoked. The sky still brooded. I hailed a cab on Broadway and told the driver to head uptown. Fast. At the brownstone, Fritz answered the door before I knocked. "You're expected." I handed him the case. "Kitchen or office?" "Office," he said. "He's waiting." Wolfe was in the yellow chair, arms folded, eyes half closed, the look of a man prepared to be disappointed and already annoyed in advance. "Well?" I set the case down. "Storage unit, south of Union Square." Frannie gave me the key. She has it. Had it. Passed it off on the street. Quietly. Wolfe's eyes opened. "Open it." I did. 1 layer at a time. Wolfe didn't speak until I set the ribbon on the desk. Then, "Bring me a sandwich." And the ribbon. Fritz was already in the kitchen, slicing cold roast veal with the kind of composure you couldn't buy in a butcher's apron. He looked up when I entered. and I didn't have to speak. He nodded once, wrapped the slices in a towel-warmed roll, and handed it over with a dish of mustard, so precisely aligned it might have been plated by compass. Back in the office, Wolfe had cleared a space on his desk. He held the typewriter ribbon between thumb and forefinger, turning it in the light like an appraiser examining jewelry that came with a confession. "Unspool it," he said. I did. Inch by inch, the inky coil unfurled across the blotter. "Stop." He leaned forward. "Here, I saw it too." One phrase ghosted on the surface. Appointment moved. "Keep Chase quiet." He didn't speak for a moment. Then, "Carbon." I opened the case and passed him the sheaf. He flipped the top 3, scanned the margins, then pulled out the page marked Emergency Editorial Override. "This," he said, "was meant to be seen." "By whom?" "Not the police." "Varrick?" "No, it's addressed to Bernice but never delivered. The tone is wrong. This was written to be found." I sat back. "So Lydia plants it?" "No, Lydia collects it. Someone else writes it." "Frannie?" He grunted. "Possibly, but the tone is male, arrogant, rushed. This is Varrick, or someone imitating him." "The memo to the councilman?" He scanned it, then grunted again. "Diplomatic garbage, safe, meaningless. But the line, 'Don't trust him,' that's real. That was added in panic. To warn her? To clear someone's conscience?" He reached for the calendar scrap. "Tuesday," he said. "Lunch. With Bernard. Office closed." "Bernard?" Kramer's first name. I raised an eyebrow. "You think—" "No," he snapped. "But someone wanted that name in the file." I stood, began to pace. She said someone had been in her apartment. This, I gestured toward the case. This wasn't just stored. It was hidden, for safekeeping, and for leverage. I stopped pacing. "So what do we do?" He leaned back, folded his arms again. "We examine the ribbon, carefully, then the letters. Then we verify the calendar against Varrick's secretary logs. And Frannie? She remains under watch, quietly. And Lydia? She has not reappeared?" "Not yet." He nodded once. "She will." Fritz re-entered and placed the sandwich before him without a word. Wolfe lifted it, took a measured bite, and chewed with the deliberate serenity of a man, solving crime one layer at a time. I stood by the window and watched the steam rise from the case like a secret exhaling. Wolfe didn't look up. "Archie." "Yes! Find the pressman, the one who knows her. Ask if anything's arrived under a different name. You think she mailed it?" "I think," he said slowly, "she feared someone would try to." The ribbon unspooled across the desk, like a trail in ink, and somewhere, beneath the smudge of typed letters and carbon lines, was the truth Lydia Vale had locked in a case, and nearly lost for good. The phone rang at 6:44 a.m. I was already dressed. Wolfe wasn't. Fritz answered, and 5 minutes later I had the full report and a cab waiting. Roland Chase, vice editor at Metropolitan Press, had been found dead in his office, head bashed in with a bronze paperweight shaped like a chess knight. The police were calling it a robbery. Wolfe was calling it something else before he even put on his slippers. By 7:20, I was in the building. The crime scene tape was already up, fluttering in the hall like someone had been trying to gift wrap. A murder. I flashed a card, nodded at the beat cop, and ducked beneath. Inside, Chase's office was a war zone. Desk overturned, drawers yanked, 2 bookshelves spilled onto the carpet. The chair was missing a wheel, and in the center of it all, half in shadow, half in the spotlight from the window, was Roland Chase. His eyes were open. His forehead was not. The paperweight, still, stained, rested beside his left hand. I scanned the room. Too much damage. Too fast. Whoever did it wasn't searching. They were staging. I stepped carefully behind the desk. 3 typewritten forms had been pinned under the corner of a toppled blotter. Payroll slips. All 3 bore the same name. L. Vale. Typed. Retyped. Dates amended in faint ink. The last 2 entries read sick leave. The dates didn't match what Frannie had told me. Someone had been rewriting Lydia's hours, making her disappear on paper before anyone tried in person. I pocketed the slips and stepped back out into the corridor. Kramer was on his way in, hat low, shoulders high, smoke trailing from the corner of his mouth like an accusation still forming. He didn't stop walking. "You," he growled. are going to be the reason I lose my badge. You're welcome. We both stepped inside. He gave the body a glance, then, with a sigh, turned to me. Robbery. Door jimmied. No witness. Security useless. Nothing stolen. Convenient. I hate convenient. So does Wolfe. He gave me a glare. Tell me something useful. I handed him the slips. He read them. Then again. Then swore under his breath. This wasn't a robbery. No, I said. This was a cover-up and a clean-up. Who knew Chase had these? Frannie. Maybe Varrick. Kramer snapped. Where is Frannie? Gone. He froze. What do you mean gone? She didn't show at work. Boarding house says she packed up last night. Kramer threw the slips down. She's running. Or being made to. She's next. I didn't say it aloud, but the look between us said enough. Back at the brownstone, I laid it all out for Wolfe while he forked his way through a late breakfast of scrambled eggs, rye toast, and blood orange. Segments arranged in perfect half-moons. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, eyes half-lidded, fingers drumming the arm of the yellow chair. When I got to the paperweight, his drumming stopped. Describe the wound. Blunt force. Temple. Likely from behind. And the room. Tossed like a student's apartment on rent day, but wrong tempo. Nothing stolen. Nothing hidden. The paperweight? Still there. Blood still wet. And Miss Kent? Gone. Packed and vanished overnight. No trace yet. He took a final bite of toast, then wiped his lips, set the napkin down, and leaned back. Mr. Chase was not killed for money. He was silenced. Because of Lydia? Because of the records. The falsified time cards. I nodded. They made it look like she wasn't at work the day Bernice died. And now that fiction is evidence. I opened my notebook. I pulled 3 slips. There could be more. There are. He closed his eyes for a moment. Someone wanted to erase Miss Vale's presence. And when Mr. Chase proved insufficiently discreet, they erased him. Kramer's steaming. Let him. His ire does not equal his insight. I allowed myself a half smile. You planning to enlighten him? When he asks politely. A silence followed. The orchids rustled faintly in the solarium. I broke it. You think Frannie's running? No. Then why disappear? She's frightened, but not guilty. She knows something. She suspects something. And she knows she's next. On the list. I leaned against the fireplace. You think she'll reach out? She will, Wolfe said. If she believes we're her only chance. And if she doesn't? He opened one eye. Then we wait for the next corpse. I stood. You want me to follow Varrick? No, not yet. I want you to trace the memo chain. Who had access to personnel files? Besides Chase? Frannie. Possibly Varrick. And? The bookkeeper. Name's Meyer. Doesn't talk much. Keeps to himself. Talk to him. And the police. He waved a hand. Let Kramer growl. When he's ready to think, he'll call. I moved to the door. And Archie. Yes? Have Fritz prepare something light. I've lost my appetite for violence before noon. I nodded, but I didn't tell him the part that still itched at the back of my brain. The paperweight had been placed too neatly. Not tossed. Not dropped. Set down. Like punctuation. Roland Chase. Hadn't been murdered in haste. He'd been silenced with intention, framed with care. And somewhere, someone was rewriting the ending. I found her on the top floor of a converted row house in the Bronx, tucked behind a lopsided door marked 3B. It had taken Saul 4 phone calls, 2 cab rides, and 1 favor owed to a night clerk, who didn't like cops, but liked money even less. The landlady led me up with a shrug and a muttered, hasn't left all day, barely eats, paid in cash, never gave a last name. I knocked. Once. No answer. Miss Vale, I said, voice low. It's Archie Goodwin. You asked for someone who'd believe you. The latch turned. She stood in the gap. Eyes rimmed red, blouse wrinkled, one sleeve torn at the cuff. Her hair was pinned back hastily. A suitcase sat on the bed behind her, still open, half packed, like she couldn't decide whether to run or burn the evidence. You, she said. You found me? Guilty. I didn't leave a trail. You did, I said. You just didn't know who'd be reading it. She stepped back. I entered. She closed the door behind me. The room smelled of dust and cold toast. She hadn't opened the window. I suppose Wolfe sent you to bring me in. No. That made her stop. No, she said. Then why are you here? Because Roland Chase is dead. Head caved in with a paperweight. You're not safe, and Wolfe thinks you never were. She sat down on the bed. The suitcase creaked. Her voice dropped. I thought he sold me out. Wolfe? She nodded. You told Kramer about the manuscript. He already knew. We didn't name you. You didn't have to, she said bitterly. They would have traced it anyway. I crossed to the window, looked down, rain beginning to dot the iron railing. You think we gave you away, but you gave yourself away. The memo, the edits, the time cards, they were all tied to you. I didn't write the page, she said quietly. The one about she flew. I didn't, I swear it. I believe you, she looked up, eyes tired but skeptical. You do? I saw the typewriter, ribbon, the pressure marks. Wolfe was right. It wasn't your machine. It was Frannie's. She stiffened. Frannie? She's gone too. Disappeared the day Chase died. Lydia stood, pacing now. She said she was scared. Said Varrick was watching her. He was watching all of you. I had the envelope, she murmured. All the letters, the notes. I didn't know what to do. Sending it to the press would have made you a target. I know that now. Her voice cracked. I don't want to die for a mistake I didn't make. You won't. She turned. How can you promise that? I don't make promises, I said. But Wolfe doesn't lose cases. And he doesn't abandon clients, especially ones who didn't lie to him. She hesitated. Her hand touched the window frame. I don't know who to trust anymore. You already did, I said, when you left that key with Frannie, and that finally broke her. She sat back down, head in hands. I waited until she breathed again. Then, come back with me. The brownstone's safe. Wolfe will listen. She didn't speak for a moment. Then, quietly, she said, okay. I nodded once. We left before the landlady could ask questions. Rain clung to the curb like static. The cab smelled of leather polish and tired horses. Lydia sat beside me, silent. We didn't speak again until the brownstone steps came into view. Fritz opened the door without asking. Lydia paused at the threshold, like she half expected a camera flash or a fist. Instead, there was silence. Warm, still, unhurried. I led her through the hall. She looked smaller in the soft light of the brownstone. A girl caught in machinery, pressed thin between gears. Wolfe was in his chair, yellow leather, legs planted, fingertips pressed together beneath his chin. He didn't stand. He didn't need to. Lydia stopped just inside the office door. You brought her, Wolfe said. I nodded. No resistance. She flinched. I didn't. Come to confess, she said. No, Wolfe murmured. You came to survive. He gestured to the red chair. She sat, quietly. Wolfe studied her for a full 10 seconds before he spoke again. You believe I betrayed you. She didn't deny it. I don't know what to believe. You believe the world conspires in secret and kills in daylight. That's not untrue, but it is incomplete. Lydia's voice was faint. I thought I could fix it. With pages. You can't, he said. You can only reveal it, which is harder. She lowered her gaze. The ribbon, Wolfe said, turning toward me. The appointment book, the carbon copies. In your desk, I said. Safe. He turned back to her. You didn't plant the forged page. You didn't alter your time cards. But you let fear make you a suspect. What would you have done? Controlled the board, he said. Watched who moved first. She bit her lip. And now? Now, Wolfe said. You will tell me everything. Every name. Every phrase. You were told to retype. Every note you were asked to destroy. I didn't destroy anything. I know. He closed his eyes. The redhead lied. That will suffice. Silence again. Then, you knew. I always know, Wolfe said. I stepped forward. Kramer's going to want to talk to her. He can wait. She's not safe. She is now. Lydia looked up. I can't go back there. You won't, Wolfe said. You'll stay here. For now. Fritz will show you the guest room. Her voice cracked. Why are you helping me? Wolfe opened his eyes again. Because the truth doesn't type itself, Miss Vale. And the one who does is often the first to bleed. Fritz reappeared. Silent. Expectant. Lydia stood. She gave me a nod, barely perceptible, and followed him out. I stood by the door. She's rattled. She's not broken. You think she's the key? She's the ribbon, Wolfe said. Thin. Delicate. full of words no one else wanted preserved. He reached for his glass. Water, not beer, clear as silence. "We find Frannie next," he said. "And if she's the one who forged the page, she won't run far." "And Varrick?" Wolfe closed his eyes again. "When a man lets others type for him," he said, "he forgets what his own words sound like. That's when the fiction begins." And that, I thought, was Wolfe's gospel. A chair for each client, a word for each lie and silence, for every truth that someone tried to rewrite. The envelope sat on Wolfe's desk like a confession waiting for breath. 16 carbon pages, 3 on onion skin, 10 typed double-spaced, 2 with smeared margins, 1 handwritten. "Note in the corner, keep this quiet or it's both of us." Wolfe hadn't touched them yet. He held a notepad in one hand, a fountain pen in the other, dictating. I sat opposite, pad on my knee, pen moving slower than usual. "First question," he said, "to Miss Vale. Did Varrick ever dictate a letter, in person, or only by phone?" I scribbled. "Second, were any drafts edited after her shift ended?" "I wrote that too." He paused. "Third, did she ever see Roland Chase destroy a document himself?" I looked up. "That one sounds like you already know the answer." "I don't," Wolfe said, "but I suspect she does." He reached for the top carbon and handed it to me with 2 fingers. "Begin." I smoothed the page, adjusted my tone. Date, March 3rd, from the desk of A. Varrick to M. Grissom State Committee. Wolfe lifted his head. Grissom was a fixer. "Friend of City Hall. Too clean in print, too slippery in practice." I read on. "Per our last meeting, I've ensured no further queries will come through official channels. The matter of South Bend has been resolved. The contract has been approved. Under auxiliary vote, your assurances are appreciated. Enclosed is a formal thank you, delivered off record, as you prefer." I looked up. Wolfe's brows creased slightly. "Formal thank you," he repeated. "Bribe, most certainly." Veiled but deliberate, he motioned. "Next page." I read it. A note to the publisher of the Weekly Ledger, an unsigned editorial on zoning approvals, requested language softening, and a check enclosed for last month's formatting error. Third letter, a memo from Varrick to Chase. Change. The time card. LV was off the floor by 3:15. No log, just trust. Wolfe held up a hand. Pause. He leaned forward. "She typed that? Lydia's name is at the bottom, as typist, but she didn't write it. Not unless she's..." Suddenly the vice editor. Wolfe's fingers tapped twice against his temple. "Resume." I read 4 more, then reached the 9th. It was the thinnest. Light ink, nearly faded. I cleared my throat. March 14th. Internal note. Witness statement. Miss Vale reports a private meeting between Mr. Varrick and M. Grissom in the 7th floor conference room. Time noted, 2:42, door closed, no recording made. No minutes kept. I paused. Miss Vale was instructed to forget the incident. She typed this record after hours, for safekeeping. I looked up. Wolfe didn't blink. "She typed more than gossip, Mr. Goodwin." He reached for the paper. "She typed blackmail." Wolfe studied the page as if it were a chessboard, and he'd just discovered a bishop lying. The phrasing was careful, passive, stripped of accusation but heavy with implication. Whoever asked her to type it, if anyone had, it wasn't for posterity. It was leverage, and Lydia Vale had kept it. She knew, I said, that if she vanished, these would talk. "No," Wolfe murmured. "She hoped they would. That is different." He placed the carbon beside the others and gestured again. "Continue." The next 3 were shorter. One described a meeting between Chase and someone labelled only BS. Perhaps Bernard Salinger, an ex-municipal auditor turned private consultant. That page had heavy strike-throughs and new lines typed above the old in darker ribbon. A revision. Someone had gone over it. Hard. Wolfe frowned. Sloppy, desperate, or both. The next letter was half-finished. A draft to a publishing contact. It mentioned killing a story, reassessing staff contracts, and clearing undesired narratives before spring. He grunted. Editorial euthanasia. The last was the most curious. A list of names, no addresses, handwritten annotations next. To each. LV, saw too much. FK, drank too much. RC, loyal but weak. Wolfe took that sheet and examined the ink, not Lydia's hand. Frannie? He nodded once. Possibly. Or Varrick himself. This is a pruning list. I stood, started to pace. She was documenting, cataloguing. He didn't answer. Wolfe, this wasn't panic. She was preparing something. She was safeguarding truth. For release? No. He looked up. For survival. I stopped pacing. You think she typed these to protect herself? To protect the evidence? Wolfe said. She knew she was dispensable. These make her indispensable. I leaned on the edge of the desk. She knew she couldn't stop them. So she made sure they couldn't bury her without digging up all of this. Wolfe nodded. Mr. Goodwin, what did we find in the case? A ribbon, a calendar note, carbon copies. And now, we have a motive. He leaned back, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. She was going to leak this, or threaten to. The bribe, the edits, the memo about the fixer. Varrick's operation was held together by Polish. This would scratch through. The veneer. So who killed Chase? Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Someone with access. Someone who knew the ribbon existed. And Frannie, gone. Still the prime suspect? He hesitated. Perhaps. Or perhaps she's only another typist who knew too much. I watched him for a moment. Then, what's next? He tapped. The page listing initials. We find BS. And? He handed me the carbon from March 14th. Then we ask Miss Vale what else she typed. What else she didn't include. And if she's holding back? She's earned caution. Wolfe rose slowly, a rare gesture. He moved to the window, stood in silence. She preserved the truth in carbon. Thin protection. Only if no one reads it, Wolfe said. I gathered the papers, stacked them neatly. He turned. Send copies to Saul. One to Lon Cohen. Redact nothing. That'll set off fireworks. So be it. He sat again. The truth is printed now. I nodded. And once it's typed, he finished it. It never really disappears. The scent hit first. Warm saffron, toasted to golden, cut with the faintest drift of browned butter. Fritz entered with a silver tray and the poise of a man who considered silence a seasoning. 2 slices each, perfectly stacked, no crumbs. Wolfe didn't look up from his chair. Put it on the credenza. Fritz obeyed without a word. When the tray was set, he turned and vanished with the same calm that had brought him in. I stood at the side table, poured 2 glasses, sparkling cider, not wine, and handed one to Lydia, who was already seated in the red chair. Wolfe's voice came without preamble. You were writing more than letters, Miss Vale. Lydia hesitated. She held the glass, untouched. I wrote a lot of things. Wolfe adjusted in his chair. The only movement he made. You ghost wrote a manuscript. Lydia's expression didn't change, but her silence did. It was never published. Wolfe said, Varrick killed it. She nodded. Barely. Why? Because it was fiction, she said softly, but not far enough from the truth. Wolfe hummed, a sound low and even. Which parts were too close? She looked down. I made the editor corrupt, the secretary frightened, the fixer greedy, the redhead cleverer than she should be, and the author. She looked up now. Her voice was dry. The typist, who sees everything, who says nothing, who edits truth until it disappears. Archie leaned against the fireplace. So, you made yourself the heroine. She didn't flinch. And the villain. And the victim. Wolfe nodded. But not the killer. Lydia's lips parted. Closed again. No. Wolfe lifted a slice of toast. You submitted it under a pseudonym. She nodded. K.R. Morrow. A good name, Wolfe muttered. Solid. Forgettable. It was rejected. It was buried, Wolfe corrected. Along with Bernice. Lydia's breath caught. I didn't mean for that. I just wanted... You wanted a voice. She didn't respond. You got one, Wolfe said. In carbon and ink. She looked at me. You believe me. I met her gaze. I do. Then help me finish the story. Wolfe sipped his cider. We intend to. But how? Wolfe placed the glass down and folded his hands. By making your fiction inadmissible. I raised an eyebrow. He glanced at me. Truth is vulnerable. But fiction, Mr. Goodwin, fiction can burn. Wolfe turned to the tray, lifted another slice of toast, and studied it as though it might provide additional evidence. The saffron edge glistened faintly under the lamplight. Delicate, golden, precise. It was not the manuscript that endangered. You, he said. It was the editorial silence that followed. Lydia leaned forward slightly, voice low. I never showed it to anyone else. No, Wolfe said. But Varrick read it, likely before it was submitted. He never admitted. He wouldn't, Wolfe interrupted. To acknowledge it would be to admit knowledge, and knowledge in his hands is always currency. She set the untouched cider down. Her hands trembled now, but barely. I only typed what I knew. No, Wolfe said again. You typed what you feared. Archie stepped away from the fireplace, arms folded, and someone else read between the lines. Lydia turned to me. Roland. Possibly, I said. Or Frannie, or both. But Varrick was the one with the motive to suppress it, and the means. Wolfe's eyes stayed on her. You submitted the manuscript on a Tuesday. She blinked. Yes. The same Tuesday Bernice logged a suspicious meeting on the 7th floor. A pause. Longer than the rest. That wasn't coincidence, Wolfe murmured. Lydia stared at him, something in her posture collapsing. She asked me to delete it. Bernice! She saw the manuscript in the submission pile. She recognized the names. She was furious. Said I was playing games I didn't understand. Wolfe tilted his head. And did you? No, not then. But she didn't report. You? No, she whispered. She pitied me. Wolfe closed his eyes. And pity, Miss Vale, is the prelude to betrayal. Archie exhaled. So Varrick ordered Chase to clean up. He altered the logs, moved the time cards. And Chase, Wolfe added, died with a paperweight beside his head. A chess knight. Irony. Lydia looked down. I shouldn't have written it. No, Wolfe said. But now that you have, we'll use it. She looked up again. How? Wolfe reached for the envelope on his desk, the one marked K.R. Morrow. Confidential. He slid it across to me. Archie. Send a copy to Grissom's secretary. No cover letter. Won't that start a fire? That, Wolfe said, is precisely the intention. I took the envelope, slid it into my jacket. Lydia sat back, breath slow. You're risking everything. No, Wolfe said gently. I'm risking nothing. You've already done the dangerous part. She looked across the room. The orchids in the corner glowed pale under their lamp, untouched by all of this. Then Wolfe said, quieter now. You wrote yourself into a story that frightened men with real power. She nodded. You weren't the heroine. She frowned. You were the author. That silenced her completely. Wolfe lifted the last toast. To authors, he said. The ones who understand punctuation is dangerous. Archie raised his glass. I did the same, and Lydia, slowly, followed. We drank in silence. Outside, Manhattan moved like it always did, heavy, grey, and full of stories buried under headlines. But, inside the brownstone, one story had just begun its final revision. It was 23 minutes past 11 when the bell rang. Was halfway through my second page of notes, and Wolfe had just grunted something scathing about the Times crossword when Fritz appeared at the office door with both eyebrows lifted. She insists, he said, and smells of something stronger than rain. Wolfe sighed. You let her in? I'm not a fool, Fritz said. I took her coat and left the door open. I met her in the hall. Frannie. The green coat again. Mascara smudged. Hair mussed from the wind, but pinned too tightly to have been accidental. She looked like she'd come from a bar, a cab, and a memory, none of which she trusted. I need to speak to Wolfe. You're lucky he's listening. She stepped in. I followed. Wolfe didn't move. She paused at the threshold, breathing shallow, hands at her sides. I know who killed Roland Chase. Wolfe blinked once. Do sit. She took the red chair without protest, crossed her legs, uncrossed them. I saw it happen, she said. You were in the office? I asked. She nodded quickly. Where? In his office. I had gone back for a memo, a file. He and Varrick were arguing about the carbon letters, the ones Lydia kept. What did you see? She glanced between us. I saw Varrick hit him. With what? A paperweight. The Bronze Knight. Her hands trembled now, just slightly. He didn't yell. He just struck once, then stood there, calm, like he expected the noise. You didn't intervene? No, I ran. Where? I don't know. I caught a cab. I walked for blocks. I didn't stop. And then you came here. She nodded. Because if I go to the police, he'll know. Wolfe was silent. Then he spoke, evenly. You say you saw the killing. Yes, but the crime scene had no sign of you. No fingerprints, no heel. Scuffs. No cigarette ash. No second coat. She swallowed. I didn't touch anything. Miss Kent, Wolfe said. What did the wallpaper look like? She blinked. What? In Mr. Chase's office. The wallpaper. I don't. Remember? Brown? It was blue. Silence. Wolfe leaned forward. The air in the room seemed to tighten. You weren't in the office. You were in his apartment. She froze. And you weren't a witness, Wolfe said coldly. You were the typist. Frannie didn't breathe. Her mouth parted, then closed again. Wolfe's voice remained steady. You typed? The letter Varrick wanted Chase to sign. The one naming Lydia as unstable. It had the same margin calibration, line weight, and spacing as the draft you prepared for Varrick's fundraising gala. You thought we wouldn't notice, but you left your fingerprint on the ribbon spool, not the paper. She stood up, then sat back down just as quickly. I didn't kill him. No, Wolfe said. You were complicit. Her eyes burned now. He told me he needed to protect the company, that Chase was going to talk to the press, that Lydia had written letters that could ruin everything. I just typed it. That's all. I wasn't in the room when it happened, I said. But you went back after. She looked at me. Yes. To clean? No. To take back the page I typed. Wolfe raised an eyebrow. And? I couldn't find it. He'd already hidden it. Wolfe let silence stretch between us. Then, you were not in fear tonight. You were ashamed. She looked down. He said he'd take care of everything. That if I stayed quiet, I'd still have my job. That no one would get hurt. Wolfe picked up his glass and sipped slowly. Miss Kent, do you still have your copy of the original novel? She blinked. No. He turned to me. Mr. Goodwin. I nodded. Already checked her apartment. Empty drawer. Missing box. Frannie's head snapped up. You searched me? We searched the lies, Wolfe said coolly. She stood again, this time without falling back. Will you turn me in? Wolfe considered. No, she exhaled. Relief flickered. But you will make a statement, and you will do it here, with Mr. Goodwin, in ink. Her eyes widened. Why? Because, Wolfe said, you are not the last domino. You are the second. She didn't understand. That much was clear, but she nodded. Outside, rain began ticking the windows again. Fritz, somewhere in the house, hummed faintly to himself. I poured a fresh page into the typewriter, rolled it to the top, and looked at Frannie. Whenever you're ready. She stared at the machine like it might bite. Then slowly, she began to speak, and this time, there was no fiction in it. The rain hadn't let up. It battered the windows of the brownstone like a guest too cowardly to knock. Inside, Nero Wolfe sat motionless in his yellow chair. A bottle of cognac rested beside him, unopened. His eyes, though half-lidded, missed nothing. Archie stood by, the globe, hand in his pocket, watching Frannie as she twisted the handkerchief in her lap. She had shown up without warning, soaked and dishevelled, her lipstick smudged and her nerves stripped bare. The smell of gin preceded her confession, though her lips tried to frame it as courage. I saw it, she said. I was there. I saw Varrick do it. Wolfe did not move. Archie crossed one foot over the other. Do what exactly, Miss Frannie? She blinked at him, eyes glassy and ringed in mascara. Kill him. Chase. He hit him. With that thing. A paperweight, Archie offered. She nodded. Yes, it was heavy. Brass, I think. On the desk. It happened fast. Where exactly? Wolfe asked. She hesitated. In the office. Wolfe raised a hand. Miss Frannie, I dislike prevarication. More than most things, in fact. You are here to confess. Do so. In full. I'm not confessing. I told you. I saw it happen. Archie said. That's the trouble, sweetheart. You weren't supposed to see anything. You were missing for 2 days. Frannie licked her lips. I was afraid. I didn't want to be dragged into it. You didn't want to be caught in it, Wolfe corrected. A pause. The kind that grows teeth. Frannie reached into her coat and produced a folded sheet of carbon. Paper, crumpled at the corners. I took this. Before I ran. Archie stepped forward, took it, and unfolded it with care. A paragraph typed in black, smeared just slightly along the edges. It was a memo, unsigned, describing a meeting between Varrick and Chase to neutralize the typist. There was no date, no initials. You expect us to believe you saw Varrick kill Chase over that? Archie asked. Frannie's jaw tightened. It wasn't just that. He said Chase was weak, that he might flip. I tried to stop it, but you weren't there, Wolfe murmured. Frannie turned sharply. I was. No, Wolfe said, calm as fog. You were in Chase's apartment, not his office. The wallpaper behind the desk is green damask. Your description referred to cream walls with a fireplace. You typed the page, Miss Frannie, on your own machine, after the fact. Her eyes widened. No. Yes. Wolfe's voice cut like a knife through a veil. And you left the ribbon. Sloppy. She stood abruptly, hands splayed. You can't prove. I needn't, Wolfe said. Kramer can. The door to the orchid room swung open with a click. Inspector Kramer stepped through, his raincoat still damp from the shoulders. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw rigid. Well, he growled. That's enough. Frannie turned, stunned. You were listening? Plant room has a vent, Kramer said. You talk loud when you drink. She backed toward the door. No, Wolfe said. You'll sit. Kramer advanced. Frannie trembled, then collapsed back into the red chair. Her breath hitched in shallow bursts. Archie folded his arms. Why frame Lydia? Frannie looked down. She found out. About me and Varrick. And Chase. Said I'd lose everything if it came out. She wanted out. But She wanted justice, Wolfe finished. You wanted distance. Frannie sniffled once. I didn't mean to kill anyone. You didn't, Wolfe replied. But you manufactured the lie that did. Kramer moved to the desk. We'll need a statement. She's had her statement, Archie said. All typed up, just not signed. Wolfe took a long breath. Have her machine seized. You'll find the slug spacing on that forged memo matches her type bars precisely. A slight misalignment on the lowercase r. Frannie stared, hollow. I didn't know you'd check that. You didn't know much, Wolfe said, but you knew enough to kill with words. Kramer cuffed her without flair. Let's go. Archie opened the door. Rain swept in. Frannie didn't resist. Wolfe reached for his cognac. Finally. Mr. Goodwin. Yes, sir. Bring me the ribbon. I fetched the typewriter ribbon from the drawer where I'd tucked it. Frannie's. Model had a left margin tooth worn slick. Wolfe didn't glance up as I placed it on the tray beside his glass. I suppose, I said. She figured if Lydia looked like the jealous one, no one would dig deeper. She miscalculated, Wolfe replied. Her talents were mechanical, not strategic. She had motive, I said, watching the door swing closed behind Kramer and his prize. Sleeping with 2 men who died within the week. She had fear, Wolfe corrected. The more reliable fuel. I sat down across from him. The office felt colder without her perfume lingering. Maybe that was for the best. What now? I asked. Wolfe opened a drawer and pulled out a square envelope. A letter arrived this morning. Anonymous. Naturally. Let me guess. Another confession. No, he said, holding it without opening. A suggestion. That the carbon copy she handed over was not the only one. I frowned. Somebody's hedging bets. Wolfe tapped the envelope. The envelope was typed. On the same machine. No, but mimicking her alignment. Someone hoped we'd think it was. I rose and crossed to the globe, spun it once, then stopped at Europe. So Frannie wasn't the only one playing typist. Someone else is still out there with a ribbon and a grudge. Wolfe leaned back. Which raises the question, why now? I nodded. Why not earlier, when it might have done more damage? He poured the cognac, a slow trickle into the heavy crystal. Because damage was never the goal. Delay was. To buy time, he sipped. Or to force our hand. I took the empty chair. The red one. She nearly pulled it off, I said. Yes, and she might have, had she remembered which room she was lying about, or typed a little straighter. Indeed. We sat in silence. The clock ticked just loud enough to prove it still worked. The orchids above us loomed in their glass prison, untouched. After a minute, Wolfe stirred. Mr. Goodwin. Yes. You will retrieve all remaining pages from the locker. All of them. I already did. No. You retrieved what you thought mattered. I want what she thought didn't. I stood. You think the throwaways tell the real story. I think no typist forgets what they retype. The mind may lie, The hands remember. I paused. You think she was blackmailing someone else? Or shielding them? He said. I grabbed my hat. Anyone in particular? Wolfe sighed. No, but it wasn't Varrick. He was being handled, not hunted. That leaves Chase. Too ambitious, Wolfe said. Not clever enough, and now too dead. I walked to the door. Wolfe added, be wary. Whoever typed that letter wanted her caught, but not all loose ends tied. Got it, I said. Wear gloves and keep moving. And, he said, no interviews with boarding house mistresses this time. We've had our quota of melodrama. I smiled. I'll keep it to locksmiths and janitors. He closed his eyes, settled into the chair as if the weight of Frannie's confession had already been absorbed into the wood grain. Outside, the rain had eased. The sidewalks were still slick, reflecting the tail lights of taxis and the low glow of street lamps. Somewhere in the city, a carbon copy sat in a drawer, or under a bed, or folded inside a book, waiting. Frannie had tried to write her own ending. She'd used ribbon, guilt, and lies. She forgot that Wolfe didn't read fiction, and I didn't trust editors. I buttoned my coat and stepped into the cold. One more page to find. Then maybe, just maybe, the case would be done. But I wasn't betting on it. The coffee was black, bitter, and, if you asked Inspector Kramer, served with a smirk. He sat in the red chair, one elbow perched on the arm, fingers tapping the brim of his hat resting on his knee. Across from him, Wolfe reclined behind his desk, the yellow chair absorbing his bulk like a throne tired of judgment. The two men exchanged silence with the casual weariness of old enemies playing their 20th draw. Fritz had brought the tray in without a word. No saffron, no tart. Just the dark roast and two porcelain cups that steamed quietly between them. Kramer took a sip and grimaced. Still tastes like varnish. Only to a man whose palate has been eroded by street corner hot dogs, Wolfe murmured. I stood by the bookshelf, arms crossed. I'd learned better than to insert myself when Wolfe chose silence over sarcasm. But I knew this game. Kramer wouldn't ask outright, and Wolfe wouldn't volunteer. Kramer sighed through his nose, eyes narrowing. She confessed. Eventually, he said. Didn't take much after you laid it out. Wolfe raised a brow. Yes, had the nerve. To blame it all on the typewriter. She's not the first to make poor choices with a keyboard. I fought back a grin. Wolfe didn't glance at me. His fingers rested on the arm of his chair, still as orchid stems before a storm. Kramer sniffed again. Louder this time. You going to tell me how you figured it out? No, that was it. One word, 2 letters. Less sound than steam hissing from the cup. Kramer turned his hat in his hands. Figured as much. Wolfe shifted, his gaze toward the window. The truth, Inspector, was in the margins, where people think it's safe to lie. The silence that followed was heavy and a little sour. Frannie'll get 20, maybe more, Kramer muttered. And Lydia, Kramer shrugged. She's clear. The DA's office won't touch her, but I heard she won't be coming back to the city. Wolfe nodded, once. It was the kind of nod that ended discussions. A final punctuation, like a period at the end of an epitaph. She sent a telegram. I offered, voice low. Upstate, says she's taking a teaching job. English lit, typing on the side. Kramer huffed. Typing, huh? Wolfe's eyes closed. Outside the brownstone, traffic murmured with post-storm sluggishness. Inside, the lamps threw golden ovals across the rug. The orchid room was quiet, sealed for the evening. No scent drifted out, just velvet curtains and stillness. She played it well, Kramer said. Wolfe didn't answer. She damn near fooled me. She fooled herself, Wolfe said finally. And that is more dangerous. Kramer rose, brushing crumbs from his trousers that didn't exist. Well, Goodwin. Another circus closed. Tell your boss he's insufferable. I'd need a louder trumpet than this mouth, Inspector. Kramer snorted and made for the door. He paused in the threshold. You were right, he said, not looking back. About the ribbon and the lie. Then he was gone, coat flapping like a closing file. I waited a beat, then walked over to Wolfe's desk. She won't be back, you know, I said. Wolfe opened his eyes, not surprised. Some dames, I said, write their exit lines. Others, type them. He didn't answer. The coffee cooled between us. Wolfe remained still for a long moment, as though listening to something behind the silence. Then he shifted slightly in his chair, fingers grazing the edge of the armrest. Not impatient, just thoughtful. The typist, he said finally, left more than impressions. She left punctuation. I looked at him sideways. Meaning. She struck her keys with a particular pressure. Frannie's fingers were impatient, Lydia's hesitant. The page bears the difference. I raised my brows. You got all that from the carbons? I got enough. The spacing on the forged. A memo was too sharp. The periods were punched through like a telegram from a guilty conscience. I nodded slowly. You always did trust the machines more than the people. He exhaled through his nose. The machine is honest. The operator, less so. The front door closed below. Fritz's soft steps faded into the kitchen. The brownstone eased back into its night rhythm, where every creak had a place and every silence meant the case was closed. I walked over to the fireplace and leaned an elbow on the mantel. The logs hadn't been lit since early spring, but the room still held the scent of cured wood and ash. A place for endings. She tried to blame the ribbon, huh? I said. She tried many things, Wolfe replied, including manipulation, deceit, seduction, and hysteria, but never competence. I smirked. So much for the femme fatale. No, Wolfe said, eyes half-lidded. She was merely a frightened woman who believed fiction could save her. A faint scratch came from the hallway. Fritz returning, perhaps to collect the cups. Wolfe raised a hand slightly, and I understood. Leave them. Let the evidence cool. The telegram still sat unfolded on the blotter. I glanced at it again. Lydia's words were neat, distant, and final. There was no thank you, just an address, a subject line, and a signature, like a resignation letter typed on hotel stationery. She never asked for her job back, I said. No, Wolfe murmured. She understood something most do not. What's that? That departure is sometimes cleaner than redemption. The office fell quiet again. I stepped back to the red chair and straightened it, a habit from years of clients and suspects tilting it askew. Wolfe noticed, of course. He noticed everything. She had reasons, I offered. Yes, Wolfe said. And motivations, which is not the same as innocence. I sat on the edge of my desk. You think she knew what Frannie did? She knew pieces. Enough to feel shame, not enough to act. She never would have made it as a gumshoe. She wasn't meant to. She was meant to type and dream and forget. The rain started again outside, just a whisper on the window panes. Like someone striking a match 1,000 miles away. I poured myself a fresh cup from the carafe Fritz had left. It was lukewarm, but I didn't mind. I'll file the final report in the morning, I said. Wolfe didn't respond. His eyes were already drifting toward the bookshelf, where a familiar spine waited. A history of 16th century duplicity, if memory served. I took the cue. With one last glance at the empty red chair, I stepped out, shutting the office door behind me. The case and the girl had both turned their last page. The kitchen held a hush that only Fritz's quiet movements dared disturb. The saffron toast was golden, its edges crisped just so, served on the warmed porcelain Wolfe insisted on when comfort was paramount. I slid into the chair by the end of the table, a folded newspaper under one arm and a sharp grin already forming. Wolfe, across from me, adjusted his napkin with one hand and reached for his glass with the other. The morning had not yet turned grey, but the air in the brownstone carried the weight of something wrapped up. Fritz placed the toast before Wolfe, who, with a nod that passed as thunderous praise, gave it his full attention. I cleared my throat and unfolded the paper. The New York Literary Review, I began. Page 3, buried somewhere between an article on opera staging and a complaint about modern syntax. Wolfe looked up just slightly, then resumed his patient dissection of the toast. Quote, with the closing of the Varrick Review, we bid farewell to a publication that promised much and delivered mystery instead of meaning. Its final issue offered an editorial so self-congratulatory it might as well have been engraved on a mirror. Wolfe raised one eyebrow. I smirked. The piece goes on to accuse the magazine of obfuscation, vague threats, and indulgent tone. Wolfe's voice was low. So, a mirror indeed, Fritz returned, this time with coffee. He poured silently, and Wolfe accepted it with a nod before speaking again. That man, Wolfe said, moved a chair 2 inches. I paused mid-sip. Come again? In the photograph Lydia sent, Wolfe said, his tone now dry. The Guest chair near the bookshelf had been moved. Barely, but not by her. Varrick sat, but not there. Chase did, before the visit. He set his cup down with care. 2 inches, he murmured, was enough. I chuckled. Enough for you, maybe. Some of us need a little more. Wolfe ignored that. I reached for the toast. It's good, Fritz, I called. Whatever else happens, you've made peace with saffron. From somewhere beyond the pantry, a faint hum of satisfaction answered. Wolfe didn't smile, but he raised his glass. Barely. To silence, I said. He tapped his glass to mine. The case was closed. Wolfe did not often linger after a case. Once the threads were tied and the guilty dealt with, he preferred a retreat, either into orchids or obscure literature. But this morning, he remained in his kitchen chair, the plate before him now empty, but for saffron crumbs. He stared at them like they held an epilogue he hadn't dictated. I folded the newspaper and leaned back. You're unusually quiet. His eyes flicked toward me. The silence is pleasant. Even after Varrick's eulogy got roasted, Wolfe's lips twitched, which for him was a belly laugh. Literary men often mistake smoke for insight. I nodded toward the folded paper. He did bring a crowd, though. Shame they came with pitchforks. Wolfe said nothing. The toast had vanished. So had the need to speak. The only sounds were the tick of the old kitchen clock and the soft hiss from the radiator. Fritz outdid himself, I said. Maybe saffron was the missing element in your peace treaty. Wolfe exhaled through his nose. The taste is sharp. Reminds me of Kramer's style. I raised my brows. You planning to tell him that? I will not. We sat. The case's residue, ink, betrayal, and lies typed too neatly, had settled. And all that remained was this quiet, butter-slicked kitchen and the afterglow of a solved puzzle. Wolfe tapped the side of his glass. Lydia? She took the train. Out last night, upstate. She will not return. It wasn't a question. No, I said. She left a note. No forwarding address, but a good line. Wolfe's gaze narrowed. I reached into my jacket and withdrew the note, placing it on the table like a final clue. He opened it. 1 sentence, typed in perfect alignment. Some dames write their exit lines. Others type them. He read it twice, then refolded the paper. Poetic, he said, voice flat. She had the rhythm down. Probably wrote it after packing, not before. Good. I stood, collecting our cups. Want anything else? No. I moved to the sink. Wolfe stayed where he was, hands folded, eyes tracing a thought I couldn't follow. The chair remained still, not 2 inches out of place. Balance restored, justice typed, and silence again, served warm with saffron.